Yo, yo, yo. What's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. Today, we are talking about a topic I've been excited. I've been looking forward to talking about. I've been meaning to talk about, is probably the best way to put it. I'm not thrilled. I'm thrilled to talk about professional wrestling and one of its biggest and brightest stars being a not great person, which isn't unusual for pro wrestling, right? Like, I talk about Hulk Hogan. I did a big review of the Vince McMahon documentary. Like, pro wrestling is littered with people who are garbage people. And yet, one Phillip Brooks, the Chicago made Punk, really tried to be, still is trying to be one of the better people in the business. But he's not. He's not. And I was a fan in 2012, in 2005 in ROH for sure. But for a while, Punk was on a heater of a run that I think bumped him up into the class of one of the best talkers in the business. We'll get into that. His voice of the voiceless. And I think that's who he thinks of as himself. I think he thinks of himself as a good dude. But with my background knowledge of professional wrestling and years of doing therapy, I'm here to say he's not a good guy. He's not a good person. He is a bad dude in a bad industry who is not as bad as a lot of the other people, which is funny given the pipe bomb promo. I don't hate CM Punk. I like him a lot more than a lot of the other bad people in the business. I hate the idea that he's the voice of the voiceless. So we're going to talk about sad rich white guy Phil Brooks, who could have stayed gone and didn't, and still would have been in the upper echelon. He would have been on some people's Mount Rushmore. That's a common thing of like, because picking your top 3 favorite wrestlers is really hard. So a lot of people do the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling. Mount Rushmore, famously a stable that was pretty good. The Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, the Young Bucks, Kevin Steen, aka Kevin Owens, and Adam Cole, baby. This is like what I mean when I say like I have a stupid amount of knowledge of pro wrestling in my brain. The Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling was great. Check out Kevin Steen's promos back in the day. Again, to think he's only been a world's champion one time? WWE, you waste of space. WWE, current employer of Phil Brooks, CM Punk. If you're new to pro wrestling, this video isn't for you. Please watch my videos. No, we're just going to do a deep dive on some stuff, and I'm just going to throw a lot of stuff out there because it's in my brain, and I have ADHD, so I don't script my videos. So we're just going to sort of run through it. CM Punk has been wrestling since the late 90s. His, I think, official debut, as his Wikipedia page lays it out, is 1997. He started backyard wrestling with a bunch of his friends, and they made a wrestling federation, and he and his brother, CM Venom, the Chick Magnets, is what the original CM was for. CM Punk is also one of those like guys who will sort of work an interview even if he's not in character. So is the CM Chick Magnets because they were CM Punk and CM Venom, or is that Chicago made? We'll never know. Punk is not the most reliable narrator, as we'll cover. But Punk came up sort of a non-traditional way, and he went through the indies. ROH is definitely where he sort of, I don't know, was on the map. But like, he wrestled Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio when they were both suspended from WWE. So, like, he was a commodity before going into WWE. He was arguably one of the best talkers in WWE when he was there. He's a good pro wrestler, although I will generally say his ring work has never been awesome. As somebody who really liked him, he's he's not an engaging wrestler in the ring. He's a really good talker. He's a good storyteller in the ring. His moveset is so, and his execution of it is also so. He's one of those guys that when you look at his work, he's always thought more highly of himself. And I think that's just the reality of who he is. Uh, really interesting talker, so in the ring, but really thinks he's more than that. And you can see it in some of the ways that he wrestles. So he's famously straight edge, and that's been a lot of his best storylines is where he is better than you because he doesn't drink and do drugs. He's straight edge. He's better than you. And this is like classic wrestling stuff, right? Like Mr. Perfect was better than you at all the things. And we loved to boo him. We loved to see him lose because he kept saying he's better than us. And so when he lost, we had great joy. Punk was around some of the best wrestling minds in the business in those early indie days. I mean, ROH 2001 to 2005 is awesome. If you're a WWE fan and you're angrily ready to type in the comments about how great CM Punk is, like Brian Danielson, and Nigel McGuinness, Samoa Joe, all those guys in ROH, those indies, like that was a high point of wrestling. A bunch of people from Japan came over and wrestled. So there's a lot of really good stuff back from those indies. And that's when Punk came up. And I'm not diminishing or taking away from the man. I'm saying he was in that really great creative time in ROH where there's a ton of great wrestling. He had a couple of hour-long matches against Chris Hero that are kind of boring. I was invested in wrestling around that time. It was hard to keep up with some of the indies, but I was aware of a lot of that stuff going. I was a Brian Danielson fan, loved Samoa Joe, even liked Austin Aries. Talk about really terrible people. But there was some great wrestling, and Punk was sort of the first guy to come up out of the indies and make it big in WWE. He was a Paul Heyman guy. Now, he debuted on what was the rebrand of ECW, which was not awesome. But he was good. He was really good on the mic. He was good enough in the ring. I mean, I wouldn't say he's like a bad wrestler. I would just say he tries to do things that John Morrison did. And John Morrison is one of the probably like best athletes, just like on raw, not even raw athletic talent, just like could do really interesting things. And so they both debuted, maybe not debuted, but they're both in ECW at the time. That was sort of one of the big feuds that Punk was featured in when he was coming up was against Morrison in ECW. They were supposed to be wrestling Chris Benoit, but don't get concussions, kids. It's super bad for your brain. So yeah, Punk sort of came up in that time where WWE was the big game in town. So ROH was like small time and like you had to be really into professional wrestling. Again, like for me to be like Nigel McGuinness was great. Brian Danielson's run as Mr. Small Package was fantastic. Like that's going way back and is a deep cut. So Punk came out of that stuff, but WWE was the only game in town. Like TNA was around. Kurt Angle had left to go to TNA, and that was a very big get for TNA, and also didn't move the needle at all. They were clearly the minor leagues in a way that I don't know is hard to put into context when you look at how good that roster was in TNA. AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christian Cage. I mean, again, like getting Kurt Angle was an insane thing. And there was just no competition for WWE. Like TNA didn't warrant concern. And so Punk came into WWE around that time where they were the only game in town, and he made it. He was the first guy who really went from indies to the big leagues successfully, opening the door for guys like much more talented guys like Bryan Danielson. Um, Nigel McGuinness was supposed to go, but famously didn't pass his physical. It's a whole thing. Um, Seth Rollins came from that. Again, Austin Aries, who is also not a great person, um, came out of that ROH run. Samoa Joe spent some time in WWE. A lot of those guys in WWE who came from the indies, who knows would have if they would have broken through without Punk sort of showing, hey, you can go from the indies and make it WWE and be successful. So Punk makes it to the big time. In like the third brand, it went WWE had 3 shows: Raw, flagship, SmackDown, second show, ECW, third show. Punk's on ECW, um, wins the ECW championship. The Benoit stuff happens. It's not great. And this is like me oversimplifying things. I'm not going through his Wikipedia page. I'm going off of memory. um, and then Punk goes to the big time. He goes off of ECW and has some really good feuds. I think part of my favorite run of CM Punk's is the Straight Edge Society. So it's Punk being better than everyone because he's straight edge. And he is a cult leader for all intents and purposes. He starts the Straight Edge Society. He has fans come out of the crowd to join his cult and shave their heads. He has Luke Gallows join him. Just like could have been really good. Luke Gallows at this point has already been like tried and wasted in WWE. He has Serena Deeb join him, which should have been awesome because she is a very good professional wrestler. She shaves her head and joins. He feuds with the Big Show. It's fine. Big Show is like a known commodity at this point, but is not particularly engaging, which is fine for someone like CM Punk. His best work, I think, is with Jeff Hardy because Jeff Hardy has had very public issues with substance use and abuse and problems with addiction. And so Punk is a natural foil to this as somebody who is straight edge, but booed deeply by the fans. He's a heel. He's a bad guy in wrestling terms. Jeff Hardy is a face. Jeff Hardy is one of those perpetually popular pro wrestlers, regardless of what he does outside the ring. So like substance use is a problem, but like, I don't know, stop drinking and driving, stop getting DUIs. You're putting a lot of other people at risk. I hold space for you needed help. And also, that's a bad decision. Don't do that. That's shitty. So, like, I think really good. And as somebody who, like, has always liked pro wrestling, but been aware of the very valid criticisms of it, like, that's a feud that has some depth. The straight edge guy that everybody boos versus the guy who struggled with addictions for his entire career that everyone cheers. Like, that's interesting. There's moral complexity there. And that could work with somebody like CM Punk because he can tell a really good story. Jeff Hardy is not great in the mic on the mic, but is always entertaining, if not the cleanest wrestler, not the smoothest wrestler. He is engaging to watch. So yeah, a lot of great moments here. Like Punk comes out with Jeff Hardy's face paint and all the stuff. I think this is some of the best, most creative stuff in Punk's career. Meanwhile, WWE is the only game in town, and it is boring. We're heading into the 2010s where since 2001 2002 The Rock left, Stone Cold Steve Austin left, the indies got really interesting and WWE just didn't. It got super stale and super boring. TNA kept trying to like toe the line. They're called TNA, tits and asses. Like this company was trying to be what the Attitude Era was and it wasn't working. So WWE had turned PG. Linda McMahon is running for political office for some reason. I'm not gonna get sidetracked on that. And it's just like a really stale product. And I think the worst of that is John Cena. He becomes the Superman character. He is no longer the doctor of thugonomics. He is Superman. It doesn't matter if you hit him with a title belt, hit him with steel chairs, have three guys try and pin him at once. He doesn't lose. And it's boring. It isn't fun. And it's the most Vince McMahon shit ever, right? Vince McMahon also peaked in the late 90s, early 2000s. And without any competition, without anything to drive him, his brain is addled. He's probably got CTE. He's doing roids and sexually assaulting and selling women. Not going to get sidetracked. Watch my Vince McMahon video if you want more on that. And yeah, I think as fans, we're getting disillusioned, and Punk is getting disillusioned being in the business. He made it to the tippy top. He's been a world champion. He's been a WWE champion. He's done the things. He's been there for a while, and he's been injured. He's seen creative not go anywhere. He's seen the politicking backstage. Vince isn't going anywhere. It's just stale. And Punk is coming up on a contract that's expiring, and he's thinking of leaving. And he cuts one of the best promos of all time. He took a product that was stale and uninteresting and flipped it on its head. It's called the pipe bomb promo because he says in his hands, in anyone else's hands, a microphone is just a microphone, but in his hands, it is a pipe bomb. And so it's become known as the pipe bomb promo. It's very good. He wears a Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt throughout it. That apparently was happenstance, but like chef's kiss, as like Austin was the toughest SOB. He was the rattlesnake. He was this brawler who could go in the ring, but generally just had brawls and drank all the time. He had somebody throw him beers in the ring, and he'd crack them open, and he'd drink them, and he'd hit somebody with a stunner, and everybody would go wild. And so again, a natural foil to the straight edge, better than you because he's straight edge CM Punk. So he's wearing an Austin shirt. He says, "Hey, Colt Cabana, how you doing?" Cabana had been hired and fired by WWE by this time. Everyone knew that they were friends. And Punk does all these things that you weren't allowed to do, especially for all of us smart marks who read on the internet and were on the internet boards and talked about pro wrestling with other pro wrestling fans on the internet, because finding pro wrestling fans in real life is hard. And so he did all the things that we knew you couldn't do. You weren't allowed to do certain things. And he did those things, all of those things in this promo. And he cuts it against John Cena. He's going to take Cena's championship and leave WWE. And that's it. And everybody loved it. It was incredible television. And he became, this is when he started saying he was the voice of the voiceless. He was the guy who would say things and do things that other people couldn't do because he had nothing left to lose. Now, pro wrestling is predetermined. It is a show. There's corporate sponsorships. There's all these things. So to make pro wrestling controversial and interesting, it has to be okayed, right? This is all a work, but it's an interesting work, and it's done very well at a time when the industry needed it. And this was not my favorite CM Punk work, but like Punk is interesting, and it's fun to talk about pro wrestling again, finally, instead of just complaining about it. And people really weren't sure what was going to happen. It was a work, yes, and a work means like they're working the crowd, they're working the cameras. It's understood that they're in character here. Where in wrestling terms, a shoot is supposedly live, off the cuff. They're not in character. They're talking for real. They're breaking kayfabe. Kayfabe is the universe of pro wrestling. And it's interesting. And Punk says, to John Laurinaitis, who's like the head of talent relations at this point, that like, you fired people who didn't deserve to be fired. And, he kicks Vince in the balls and tells him to join the Kiss My Ass Club, which is like a real low point of WWE. Vince made women and JR and other people kiss his ass live on television because Vince is a monster. And so Punk took all these things that we knew and we hated, and he said, I hate them too. And he turned them on his head. It's really interesting. Voice of the voiceless becomes an important thing, though. Um, Punk ends up beating John Cena in arguably one of Punk's best matches. And here's the thing with pro wrestling, for those of you who don't get it, it's best when the crowd is invested, right? It's best with the suspension of disbelief, where we know it's predetermined. We know it's a show, but it's a show about a wrestling company. It isn't wrestling itself. It's meta, and when you can just stop overanalyzing it and let the stories unfold, like opera is predetermined, like the NBA is predetermined. Uh, it's a shot at the NBA there for those of you who are missing the sarcasm. It's drama around athletics, and it's beautiful when it's done well. And WWE hadn't been done well for so long that this storyline comes around, and it's great and it's wonderful. Punk beats Cena in Chicago. The crowd is nuts. It's so loud. It's a very good match that is made 1,000 times better by the crowd. Punk in Chicago is always fun. He's Chicago made Punk. Like, it's in his ring gear. It's everywhere that he's from Chicago. Hometown hero, wins. They have this thing called Money in the Bank, where it's a contract you can bring out anytime you want. And they send that guy out to cash in. Punk kicks him in the head, Alberto Del Rio. Man, what a time capsule. And he leaves through the crowd. He blows the camera a kiss. He's gone. I'm, again, a huge wrestling nerd, so I know he went home and put the championship belt in his fridge and took a picture and posted it, whatever. Like, it's a wild time to be a fan after being bored for so long being a fan. Punk does sign a contract. He comes back. For some reason, they have him and Paul Heyman hook up because, like, Punk's one of the best talkers in the business, and so is Paul Heyman. So, like, it's wasted. It is unnecessary. He has this huge long reign that I'm sure was part of him coming back in this contract, and he's, turns heel. People don't respect him. People don't love him. The Rock comes back, and he's all pissy about that. They have a so-so match. It's fine. Whatever. Punk's hurt. Punk's injured. Punk is over it. He's walking away. And he does. He takes his ball and goes home. Rightfully so. He's been treated poorly by WWE. He had his moment, but never really was the top guy. And so, like, 3 years after he cuts the pipe bomb promo, he leaves for good. For good. WWE fires him on his wedding day. Like, the pettiness here is off the charts because, again, Vince McMahon and Triple H are horrible human beings. I'll do a Triple H video at some point, probably. And Punk's just gone. It's one of the best talkers in the business, very popular guy, and he just walks away, and he goes away, and he stays away. And this doesn't happen that often in wrestling. People can't stay away, or they need the money, or they miss the hype, or whatever it is. They just don't stay away. And he does. He comes back as a masked wrestler at an indie show and hits his finisher on a guy. And the only reason I know that is because it happened in Milwaukee, not because it was big news or a big deal. He just stayed away from it. He stayed in the headlines. People chanted CM Punk. He would do these interviews and podcasts where he said controversial things or badmouthed WWE, which is very popular. And again, wrestling moved on because, as Punk said in the pipe bomb promo, he's just a wheel, a spoke on the wheel. He's a cog in the machine. It will go on. Vince McMahon will make money in spite of himself. And that's what happens. Wrestling actually gets really interesting then. Lucha Underground, which is perhaps the best wrestling promotion to have ever existed for at least 3 years, goes on a real heater. All these guys from the Indies, from Mexico, from New Japan are wrestling on this wild show set in a warehouse in Los Angeles, but like also about gods and the Aztec gold and ancient gods and tribes. And it's phenomenal. Go watch Lucha Underground. A lot of it's on YouTube. And it's so good. New Japan takes off. We get a lot of great stuff. Finn Balor, who is Prince Devitt in New Japan, starts this little thing known as the Bullet Club. The Bullet Club is a reiteration of the Four Horsemen. Um, it's a reiteration of the NWO. What the NWO became is sort of what Bullet Club became, which is like too big and unwieldy, and you lose track of who's in it and who's not. But in New Japan, Bullet Club is this group of American outsiders who are coming in Japan. They're disrespecting everything because they're Americans and they don't care. So they're the worst. And it's lovely. Um, Luke Gallows, who we mentioned earlier in the Straight Edge Society, is over there. But these young bucks, these good Christian boys, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, are over there. They had a brief minute as Generation Me in TNA. They didn't want to go to WWE, or they tried out but were too small or unliked or whatever. I don't know. And so they're in New Japan. Kenny by God Omega is in New Japan. This Canadian doofus who loves video games is over there. AJ Styles is over there. Lots of things going on. They join the Bullet Club, and they end up getting really popular. The Bullet Club is like some of the best-selling wrestling merchandise of all time. They come back and forth between the U.S. and Japan. They're in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, which is like really just centered in what is it, Reseda, California, in Southern California. But like great stuff is happening. Everybody who's big on the indies is coming through there. Guys from Mexico, guys from New Japan. PWG Battle of Los Angeles is like can't miss wrestling television. And the Bucks get this crazy idea. The Young Bucks get this crazy idea with Cody Rhodes, who's wrestling royalty and has been disenfranchised and left WWE, to run a stadium show in America without the backing of a major corporation. This is a preposterous idea that, if it works, is a huge deal. And it does. It is a smash success. It launches AEW, All Elite Wrestling, which is the only competition that WWE has had in North America in 20 years since WCW shut down. Lucha Underground, while I will say is awesome and amazing and must-see television if you like wrestling, never really got that popular. So AEW is a really big deal. They get Chris Jericho, who is also a piece of trash. Wrestling's full of pieces of trash. But the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, who I have mentioned, are wonderful human beings. We'll get to that. It is relevant in CM Punk's story later. They start AEW. And the story goes that Matt Jackson texted Punk and was like, hey, you want to talk? And Punk didn't. He was still done with wrestling. So AEW is launched and like survives the pandemic, which could have shut down, I think, a lesser company, and like has a lot of great fan goodwill. It's a phenomenal wrestling company for people who liked 2016 New Japan, who liked 2014, 2015. I don't remember when Lucha Underground was on TV, but like that 2016 to 2018 run, Lucha Underground stuff and New Japan stuff. So you have awesome folks like Pentagon Jr., who's now, what is he, Penta Cierro Mato. He's gone through a lot of name iterations. He's a pissed off ninja skeleton. He's the coolest. So you get the Lucha Bros, Penta and Phoenix. You have the Young Bucks. You have a bunch of guys from Southern California that have been around PWG. You get Kenny Omega, who has come off of like some of, I don't know, 3 of the greatest wrestling matches of all time. The best bout machine. And you get Jon Moxley, who was a huge deal on the indies. One of those guys who made the jump to WWE, was very successful. WWE didn't get it. The Lunatic Fringe was his nickname. Here's this guy who used to, like, for fun on the weekends, tape up light tubes and get hit with them because he loved pro wrestling. And he was a crazy person. And so Moxley, who's known as Dean Ambrose at WWE, leaves and shows up in AEW. It's a big get. Chris Jericho's already there. So they have their marquee guys, and they have all the guys that wrestling nerds like me love. And it does really well. It just keeps doing well. And again, it goes through the pandemic, and it survives, and it's great. And you have like some really lovable people in it, who are good people. Like the Young Bucks are well liked in the business. There are people who don't like the Bucks because they don't like the way they wrestle. That's a whole other conversation. And Punk comes back to AEW after years and years and years of light. I don't know how hard they were pursuing him, but they had pursued him. Punk stayed away, stayed away, stayed away. Punk finally comes back. Punk comes back to the launch of a brand new show in AEW in Chicago, and it is perfect. This doesn't happen in sports. That guy who wants to get one more Super Bowl and plays another year ends on an injury or a so-so season. It's just you just get disappointed, right? Like that's what happens. You get disappointed. These fairy tale endings don't happen. It's been rumored Punk's coming back. It's been rumored it's going to happen in Chicago. The fans are hot for it. Kenny Omega, who's my favorite wrestler, has worn a Cookie Monster shirt. He's worn a Chick Magnet shirt, which is in like those are deep cuts that Punk has said that's what the CM stood for. So like they're leaning into it. Kenny Omega's a heel, so you think he's like middle finger to the crowd. And it's beautiful. At this time, Adam Cole, baby, has left WWE and shown up in AEW very unexpectedly. Bryan Danielson has come out of retirement to wrestle in AEW. They debuted the same night. That's one of my favorite wrestling moments. We knew Danielson was coming at some point. We didn't know Adam Cole was coming. So Adam Cole comes out, and then Bryan Danielson comes out, and it's amazing. All this time, this is relevant. I was gonna like keep this video to 40 minutes. No chance. All this time, the story in AEW has been Hangman Adam Page. He's a cowboy. His gimmick is anxious millennial cowboy. The bit that he plays is he's a classic millennial. He's got all the talent in the world, but he's got imposter syndrome. He doesn't believe in himself. He develops a drinking problem. His friends are bigger and better than him, and he just can't get over the hump. Meanwhile, his friends are also friends with Kenny Omega, who's the best wrestler in the world, and he does get over the hump. And then no one can beat Kenny Omega because Kenny Omega keeps cheating to win. Fairly straightforward. And we're all rooting for Hangman. He kicks his drinking habit. He stays away from his shitty friends. He finds these lovable losers that believe in him and love him, and it builds him up. And he beats Kenny Omega, and it is some of the best storytelling in all of pro wrestling. In the meantime, one of my favorite matches of all time happens, which is the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. This is before Kenny Omega became a bad guy. And like they were buddies, they were tag team partners, and Hangman's drinking got in the way of that. So Kenny left Hangman behind, and Hangman, this road to redemption, Hangman overcomes his demons. He finds friends who believe in him. He defeats his former best friend, Kenny Omega, and it's lovely. It's beautiful. Punk gets his return. It's perfect. Hangman is at the top of the card. He's the champion. At some point, they got to fight, right? Punk has a great match with Darby Allin. Punk has a phenomenal match with MJF, whether that is a match made in heaven because it's storytelling based and not wrestling based. But like MJF is a generational talent. He says that about himself, but it is true. He's a very good professional wrestler. So Punk sort of gets like the pick of who he wants to wrestle with. He basically does Bret Hart versus Dynamite Kid with Darby Allin. That's an old match that they basically did, not beat for beat, but close to it. And it's well received. Punk comes out to his old Indies theme for one match in his old Indies gear, and like again, in front of the wrestling nerds who get that stuff, who like get goosebumps from it, who tear up because of it. Because when pro wrestling is done well, it's the best. It's what we love about sports. It's what we love about drama. It's what we love about live music and fireworks and all those things. It's so good. And Punk is having this fairy tale run. It's so good. At some point, Punk does a dive into the crowd and breaks his foot because he's an old man at this point. He's in his 40s. He's getting a little old. So that's a bummer. But again, like, man, this stuff doesn't happen, right? Like, too good to be true. Ugh. If I was a better YouTuber, I would stop the video here and do a part 2. I'm not, though. So we're going to keep talking. Fairy tale run, truly. I mean, I am doing a video about how terrible of a person CM Punk is, and if somebody was watching his return in Chicago, I'd probably watch the whole thing and like still feel my feelings about it, because it's so good. At some point, Punk starts to be upset because he's not the hardcore, straight edge, badass Punk that he wants you to believe. He's a little bitch Punk. He's a punky little bitch. And this has always, unfortunately, been there. But it comes to a head. Punk has had great promo battles against MJF, who's a very good talker, against Eddie Kingston, who's a very good talker. And they say, Punk, you're phony, you're a fraud, blah, blah, blah. It's all part of the bit. It's worked. Hangman Adam Page also says this to CM Punk. And Punk doesn't like that. And Hangman goes a little bit off the script and brings up how Punk talks about workers' rights, but he's not the guy for anybody in the backstage area. Where is that workers' rights stuff behind the scenes? And Punk loses it. He just cannot handle this real life criticism that's told in a wrestling story. And so Punk responds, feeling slighted, feeling put down by Hangman, who he like low-key already had beef with because somebody asked Hangman about learning from veterans in the locker room, and Hangman correctly said, I don't know that I need to learn anything from them, because Hangman's one of the OGs for AEW. He was in Bullet Club with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. He's AEW's main character. They don't like to say that. He doesn't say that, but that's the reality. And so like, right, he did the thing that Punk wanted to do but didn't. He did the thing that all the people said couldn't be done, and he did it with his best friends. He launched AEW. He made it successful. He told one of the best wrestling storylines there is. And so Hangman saying, I don't know that I need the veterans in the locker room. I don't know that I need to listen to the old heads, because I don't know what they could tell me that I don't already know, because I did it my way, which is a very Punk thing. Both like Punk, the word Punk, but also what CM Punk would in theory stand for. So Punk's mad because he takes this as a slight that Hangman doesn't need to listen to him. And then Hangman calls him out for his big talk about workers' rights while not standing up for it behind the curtain, backstage, right when the cameras are off. So Punk's furious for some unknown reason. The reason is Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, loves CM Punk because he's a huge wrestling mark. Decides to put the title on Punk again, who's broken his foot once. It's not a good match. This is at All Out 2022. Nope, that's not true. That's not when Punk wins the title. But like Punk goes to hit Hangman Adam Page's finisher, which is the buckshot lariat, which is a front flip over the ropes into a clothesline. And Punk botches it. It happens. It's live television. It's live sport. People mess up. But Punk slips, falls on his ass, doesn't execute the move correctly. And again, this is a known thing, because one of the things that's there throughout Punk's career is he thinks he can do the things that other people do because he thinks he's that good, but he's not. John Morrison could flip out of John Cena's finisher, the attitude adjustment, formerly known as the FU. Let's bring that back, John Cena, well, as long as we're being a heel. Which is he's carrying the guy on his shoulders and he flips them. It's a very basic move, whatever. Cena has always hit it. Cena's boring. It's very safe, not really, whatever. Morrison was such an athletic freak that he could flip out of it and land on his feet. The front flip, same motion. Whoop. So Punk wanted to do it, and he thought he could, and he couldn't. He couldn't ever cleanly land that counter to the move because he wasn't that athletic of a guy. So anyway, Punk ends up winning this match, and like Hangman has gone 60 minutes with Bryan Danielson at this point. He's gone to a draw with Kenny Omega. He's wrestled some of the best wrestlers for a long time. This is a short match, and Punk wins basically just by hitting his own finisher, which like shouldn't have happened. The botch really didn't make the match work, because at least then there would have been multiple finishers, but like whatever, Punk wins. And maybe that's when he gets injured. I don't remember the exact story here. But Punk at this point is growing dissatisfied with AEW. Tony Khan, not great manager of people with big emotions, lets Punk stay the title or keep the title. Um, Punk gets injured, whatever, stuff happens. And eventually Punk gets into a feud. He comes back. He gets into a feud with Jon Moxley. This is also very poorly done. They're doing like a Rocky 3 thing, but it's very weird. Moxley wins the title, and then like Punk is going to win it back. This is all out 2022. Like a week later. Again, doing the Rocky thing. It's Moxley's idea. I'm not shitting on Punk here, but it just didn't work. Because Punk is not that believable as a tough guy. Punk, while he was gone, tried to do UFC and like lost very embarrassingly. And like again, kudos to the guy for maintaining his dreams. Again, there's this piece of Punk that's like genuine and authentic, and you want to like him. He's like, it doesn't matter if I won or lost because this was my dream and I accomplish it. Like there's something admirable in that. But I think he thinks he's a tough guy then, right? Because he made it to the UFC, not on talent, but on name recognition. And like, that's the lack of self-awareness part. Like he didn't make it because he was good enough, because he lost to a bunch of low-level guys in embarrassing fashion. He made it because he's CM Punk and he's a draw. He could draw money. He could draw eyeballs to the screens, and a corporation like UFC could make money off of that. So Punk and Moxley are sort of slingshotting the title. It's unhelpful and not great. Punk wins the title, but gets injured. Tears his tricep. After the match, AEW has done this cool thing where they adapt the media scrum, which is what New Japan had done, which is like real interactions after the show was over. It's very much still in character and they're worked shoots, but like it's interesting and engaging. And Punk loses his goddamn mind. He says the EVPs here aren't fit to manage a target. He shoots on like a reporter and like calls out a reporter because he's mad about the reporter once liked something Colt Cabana said, and Punk has famously hated Colt Cabana at this point. AEW has given Punk his own show that Punk is like banning people from. No, that happens after. So Punk's sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I get fired up talking about this stuff. Punk is injured because he's old. Honestly, he's an old guy. His body's breaking down. And he says something to the effect, if you've got a problem with what I have to say, come talk to me. The Young Bucks, who he called out in this promo, and Kenny Omega, go to see him. Punk is friends with this little rascally guy who's like sort of a wrestling trainer, but never made it really as a big wrestler himself, Ace Steel. Ace is crazy. I think legitimately. It's perhaps a CTE thing. I don't know. You just look at him and you're like, that man looks unwell. Punk gets into it with the Young Bucks, who again, kayfabe and real life are good Christian boys. They pray before their matches. They don't swear very much. They're like good, gentle little dudes. And like, yes, they like do DX crotch chops, which means suck my dick, and also like flip off the camera a lot. But like, because they're like dorky little dweebs and they're very unlikable because of that stuff. They're playing their characters. Backstage, they're like good dudes. Very good dudes. Nobody has beef with the Bucks. People don't like the way they wrestle, the fans, but not the guys backstage. They started this company. Kenny Omega is a sweet man who happens to be full of muscles and will not stop kneeing you in the face until you give up, but also loves video games and is a giant nerd. And he's Canadian. He's so nice. He's just a nice Canadian who happens to be one of the most gifted wrestlers of all time. Like it's a Nikola Jokic situation where like all he seems to want to do is like ride his horses. He just happens to be one of the best basketball players on the planet. That's Kenny Omega. He just wants to play video games. He just happens to be really good at professional wrestling. And so Kenny Omega, even more so than the Young Bucks, is loved, respected, is a kind human who has no issues with anyone. He loves his cats and Kota Ibushi, his tag team partner in the Golden Lovers. Like Kenny Omega is so loved that he can have like a overtly bisexual storyline in professional wrestling and he's still loved. Like these are not the most progressive fans in the world. This is in Japan still before he comes to America, because AEW is like the liberal, progressive, hipster wrestling company. Punk throws a chair at the Young Bucks. Ace Steel bites Kenny Omega. Like, this is an actual real life workplace encounter. Christopher Daniels, very loved, well respected in the business, comes in to break it up. He gets involved in the tussle. Brandon Cutler, who's like a harmless idiot, and Michael Nakazawa get caught up in this. Everyone is suspended. Here's the thing. AEW's like chief of legal stuff is there. Like, everyone's blanket suspended. The Bucks and Kenny Omega come back way before Punk does. Whether he's suspended or it's because of his triceps tear, AEW never really gets into it, because Tony Khan loves CM Punk as a wrestler and wants to keep him there. So they give Punk his own show. They're going to keep the Bucks away from him. They're going to keep Kenny Omega from him. The Bucks come back and have some fun. Kenny Omega bites someone's arm during the match, and it's all very wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Very much Young Bucks humor. Matt Jackson goes to the buckshot lariat and lands on his butt the same way that CM Punk did, which is like how talented he is to like mimic the way that Punk botched it. It's very funny and very much on the nose. If you followed the Young Bucks career and like know their humor, like, this is obviously what they're going to do. It gives the wrestling community something to talk about without like actually damaging CM Punk at all. It honestly, if anything, keeps Punk in the conversation, which is the thing that Punk has been able to do his entire career. Even when he's not on the ring, he's making headlines. Punk comes back like 9 months after he gets hurt. He gets his own show, debuts on Collision. He picks and chooses which wrestlers he gets to put on it. It's like a whole thing. We start to see some of the cracks of like, Punk didn't come back because he loves pro wrestling and wanted to join the cool progressive wrestling company. Punk came back for himself. And at this point, whether it is brain damage or he's an old fuddy-duddy or he's turned conservative because he's gotten wealthy, and that's what happens when you hoard wealth, he's kind of the worst. And it's like people start a little bit turning on him. This joke on the internet wrestling community, which like no one cares about, is who is all banned from Collision, the show that they've gifted to CM Punk. And Punk has like a big hand in like promoting it. He has a big hand in like deciding which storylines are going to get told, which wrestlers are on it. And like, it's a good show. I'm not taking away from his wealth of knowledge around pro wrestling. On one of the shows, Jack Perry, Jungle Boy, wants to do a bit where he punches a window and he wants to use real glass. And Punk says no. A bunch of other people say no. Jack Perry's mad about it. He wants to use real glass. The internet gets a hold of this, and because the internet is already like, CM Punk's kind of the worst, am I right? This becomes a bigger deal than it needs to be. Punk is very mad about this. At All In Europe, probably the largest wrestling event of all time. This is disputed because WWE has spent a lot of time lying about how many people go to WrestleMania. A huge deal. CM Punk is wrestling Samoa Joe. This is a throwback 20 years in the making to ROH, the early days. On the pre-show, not even the main card, the pre-show, Jungle Boy, who's not a very big deal, but has turned heel, is trying to get over as a bad guy, is going to suplex a guy onto a car. He does this successfully. He stares at the camera and says, "That was real glass, cry me a river," which is beautiful. In pro wrestling terms, chef's kiss. He's a heel. He's a bad guy. You're supposed to want to boo him. The people who are on the internet talking about wrestling are going to eat this up and love it. There's merch. There's a new catchphrase. This is going to shoot this guy who's trying to become the next big heel to the moon because he has just dunked all over a fan favorite in CM Punk. Punk loses his goddamn mind again. He attacks Jack Perry in the hallway. Chris Hero, Cassius Ohno, who has been Punk's friend for a long time, breaks up the fight. It's a tussle. If you've been around, like, there's a defense here that, like, it's a sports locker room. There's some pushing and shoving. Punk basically knocks over a bunch of monitors, which almost hit the owner of the business, and puts Jack Perry in a headlock. It's very unprovoked. Like, Punk is very clearly in the wrong. It's assaulting your coworkers. I don't care that it's a sports-like locker room. It wasn't in the locker room. It's not real sport where we just lost the big match. This is a smash success for AEW. This event is. They've sold more tickets than have happened in wrestling in ages, and it's a huge deal. And Punk can't handle the slight, the perceived slight of it's real glass. It wasn't. And Cry Me a River. So good. So Punk goes after Jack Perry. And again, like, Jack Perry is not a big deal at this point. It is not worth Punk's time to be upset about this. But because in Punk's mind, he is the voice of the voiceless. He is always the victim. He has been slighted in this altercation. He's got to make it right in his own mind. Punk becomes Triple H. Tony Khan is almost hit by a bunch of monitors. He sees this. Tony Khan is not a wrestler. He's not a big sports guy. He's a small little man who probably does too much cocaine. Allegedly. He's a little guy. I've seen him at wrestling events. He's a small person. He's not an athlete. He's not a pro football player who turned around and bought the Jaguars. His dad owns the Jaguars. Is that reference there? He's just a little guy. He's scared because he's not had to see the fight like this in real life. His coworker or his employees are fighting each other. That's scary in and of itself. But he's right there. He's almost hit by a bunch of stuff. It comes to pass that CM Punk needs to be fired. This is a second altercation with a coworker. The Young Bucks have refused to work with CM Punk. I love the Young Bucks so much. They said they would give it 6 months and see if CM Punk could not get in any altercations. And I think that's probably part of this. It's a thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think Punk was so perturbed that actual good human beings, the Young Bucks, were like, healthy boundary. We're not going to work with this guy until he shows us that he is actually going to make this work, that he's invested in this thing that we've invested very heavily on, that we took the risk to build and grow and cultivate. And he came in and yes, helped take it to a new level, but is also kind of shitting on it all the time. And I think that probably was grinding Punk's gears this whole time. There's a lot that goes into like the AEW run on, like, Colt Cabana worked there and Punk had turned on Cabana after being best friends with him for a long time. And it's very odd. So anyway, things transpire. Punk is fired. This is decided on by Tony Khan, the chief legal officer, and Bryan Danielson, one of the, I'm not going to say one of, the best pro wrestler of all time. And again, somebody who's like very, 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 very incredibly respected in the business. It is agreed by these people that, like, he's got to go. We can't do this. This overshadows the smash success that is All In. Huge deal. They sell out like Wembley Stadium. I don't know that it's sold out, but like they fill it. It's an incredible event. It's very well wrestled, the whole card, but like all people want to talk about is this drama. So Punk's fired, whatever. Show goes on. It's wrestling. A few months later, Punk returns to WWE. The place he said he would never go back to, the place he cut on live television promos about while he was in AEW about how terrible it was, the place that sued him because he spoke poorly about them after he left. That's not entirely true. A doctor, he said, that had done malpractice had sued him. Whatever. They were not on good terms. The place that fired him on his wedding day, the place where he said, I'd like to think it'll get better once the owner dies, but it'll get taken over by his idiot daughter and doofus son-in-law. And then those things happened. The place that he said took his love of pro wrestling away from him, he goes back to. Now, anybody who's followed Punk's career to the degree that I'm laying out at this point already knows Punk is a hypocrite for a bunch of reasons. But the indiscretions of a young CM Punk trying to make a name for himself can be forgiven, willfully overlooked because we liked the way he talked. Wrestling fans are a tough bunch to wrangle. The indiscretions of youth, and we thought he grew and was a good person. And AEW was like, nah, that guy who in like 2005 called this chick who loved pro wrestling and wanted to learn a ring rat, who said we could take her in the ring and stiff her with a forearm and then she's injured and out for 2 more months, but she's going to keep driving us to these places. And while all she deserves is probably to get gangbanged, we're going to keep getting her to drive us to these places and let her be on the show. And we're not going to pay her, but we're not putting miles on our car. She keeps bringing us snacks because she loves the sport, but she's the worst. That guy, Phil Brooks, CM Punk, who thinks so poorly of women and thinks so poorly of the industry that he is going to speak openly and laugh about it, we thought he grew. But AEW showed us that he hadn't. If anything, that guy's still in there. And now he's old and bitter. And now he thinks that because he's wealthy and because he's got name recognition, he should be treated special. And that's what he had issue with when he was in WWE. The voice of the voiceless saying, this part-timer, I don't care that it's Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I don't care that he's the biggest movie star in Hollywood. I'm here week in and week out, busting my ass, trying to entertain these people, trying to put on good matches. And that guy's going to come back and main event WrestleMania? Fuck that. That's what Punk said. And then he became it. The guy who said to Triple H, he did an impression of him. Oh, hey, I don't think he's got what it takes. I don't have a good Triple H impression. Certainly not a good impression of Triple H as impressioned by CM Punk. The doofus Triple H is the doofus son-in-law of Vince McMahon. Punk called him out for saying, hey, you're going to fire guys. You're going to refuse to put guys over so that you can be at the top of the card. That's what Punk did in AEW. But the reason I'm doing this video now, and not just when he went back to WWE, is because the hypocrisy has stopped being, I don't know, it's beyond the pale at this point. Because Punk recently wrestled in Saudi Arabia. And while Punk was in AEW, Punk was the cool, good guy on the progressive liberal wrestling show, the hipster wrestling show. Punk's wearing Protect Trans Kids t-shirts to the ring. Very cool. Again, somebody with his clout doesn't have to be doing that. He is doing that. He's not trans himself. He's an ally. He's using his privilege, his venue, his soapbox to promote this thing. WWE signs a contract with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to get $50 million per event they run in Saudi Arabia. For context, Saudi Arabia is a problematic place. They are run by a regime that kidnaps people, kills them, tortures them, any sort of dissent, whatever. And what's going on is Saudi Arabia keeps throwing money from the oil that they have at sports. And it's called sports washing, where they're saying, we're going to try and ignore that we're run poorly, that we have these human atrocities, that we're not this great place to live, and we're going to do sports. And that will get everybody to ignore the fact that we're not a great place to live or a great regime who shouldn't be in power. While this is going on, WWE signs this contract. The Miz, not a great wrestler, kind of an obnoxious human, very much a corporate stooge of WWE. He's talking about Saudi Arabia. CM Punk chimes in and says, why don't you go to Saudi Arabia to suck a blood-covered dick or blood-soaked dick in Saudi Arabia? I don't remember the exact phrasing. It's graphic and also very on brand for Punk, saying, that's blood money you're taking because you work for a garbage corporation. Punk gave multiple interviews where he said he would never do that. Punk gave multiple interviews where he said he'd never go back to WWE, but even if he did, he wouldn't wrestle in Saudi Arabia because, nah, brah, that's against his ethics. John Cena, one of the worst wrestlers of all time, but who has won 16 championships, recently won championship 17, cementing him as the greatest of all time because Ric Flair had won 16 world championships and John Cena had been tied with him, but John Cena recently won by turning heel against Cody Rhodes, winning the championship. John Cena has foiled some of his previous foils. Punk has to be one of them, right? Punk beat Cena at Money in the Bank, blew the kiss to the camera, and went on his way. One of Cena's biggest losses. CM Punk said to John Cena, you have become what you hate. You're not the underdog. You're not the people's favorite. You're not the Boston Red Sox. You're the corporate champ. You're the worst. You're the big guy. You are the New York Yankees. This cannot stand a decade later. So Punk is going to have to wrestle Cena, right? That's the way it works. Punk is not Cena's biggest enemy. That's not the biggest feud of Cena's career. That is probably the pinnacle of Punk's career is that Money in the Bank match. And so this is a big deal. This is going to happen in Saudi Arabia. What's Punk going to do? The internet, who is split on CM Punk, is either a terrible person or still the best voice of the voiceless, the underdog, the guy we should be rooting for, the one decent person in the business. That's not true. Not just because he's not decent, but also because there are other good people. Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson, the Young Bucks, uh, Kevin Owens. Um, I will always think of him as Kevin Steen. The internet is split on this. People are assuming there's no way. He was way too public about it. He said bad things. He can't go. Also, what if he's like kidnapped and dismembered? He ends up going. We get video footage of him landing and like pushing a little kid away. It doesn't help his brand at all to see him push this little kid away. I thought it was like very on brand for him and funny that we caught it on tape, but like no one's making a big deal about that because he then goes out of his way to apologize to the country of Saudi Arabia, the people who are out there, and like this regime that is awful and has human atrocities and is very bad. And it's the full sellout of whatever morals people might have thought he had. I am in wrestling deep. I knew CM Punk was that guy who gave that horrible interview in 2005 talking shit about this poor woman who loved pro wrestling as much as he did, and he couldn't stand her, and he thought he was better than her, and so he treated her awfully because he thought she deserved it. I can hold space for CM Punk growing up in a not great family with drug abuse and alcoholism, and him growing up and deciding to be straight edge and to do something different with his life and to overcome all that and to become like hugely successful and to use his platform, albeit in an entertaining way, to promote straight edge lifestyle. I can hold space that Punk has trauma. Punk has trust issues. His brother, who started this backyard wrestling federation with him, stole a bunch of money from him. And he hasn't spoken to his brother since. He's got some family stuff. He was treated poorly by this corporation that took his body, that didn't give him insurance, that didn't cover his medical bills, that he had to have this very public falling out of it, that fired him on his wedding day, that didn't treat his wife all that great either. He has reason to not trust people. He has reason to have his walls up. He also has the resources and money to pay for therapy. And as one of the things that Kevin Nash, also not a great person, it's wrestling. There are not a lot of great people. But Nash at least went out of his way to fight for employee rights while he had the clout backstage. Not that it changed the wrestling business. These are all independent contractors who should be employees. These are all people whose bodies are being broken, who are getting concussions, who are not being taken care of without insurance, yes, they might have their medical bills covered in that moment, but like not with any sort of security. And if you're a smaller dude trying to make it, you don't have that security. It's a problematic business. John Oliver does a really good bit. Not a bit, like a segment on the problems with WWE, a few of the problems in WWE on Last Week Tonight. You can check that out elsewhere. It's good. I've talked at length about Vince McMahon. Behind the Bastards did like a huge thing on Vince McMahon. Like there's that Netflix documentary on Vince McMahon. The issues in the wrestling industry are known. Kevin Nash, I'm not saying he's a great person, but did fight for workers' rights. And after Punk left AEW, Nash pretty famously called him out and was like, dude needs to go to therapy. Like he's got issues. You can't assault your coworkers. You were handed everything on a silver platter and you still weren't happy. That's on you, bro. And like, I tend to agree with that. And Punk continues to post things like Free Palestine, which is great. I love that. More celebrities should be doing that. He posts things that are pro-trans. He's been at some pride protests, some pride rallies in the past month. Again, I don't think CM Punk is a bad person. I think he's not principled in the way that he thinks he is. And I think he goes after people who criticize him in very unfair ways. So I think like he's got okay politics, but he's got shit morals. And that's sort of like why the hypocrisy keeps shining through, because the politics are there. He's left-leaning, he's liberal, but he is unwilling to like confront his own privilege. He is somewhat using his platform for good, but like he's taken money from WWE, who Triple H was just at the confirmation hearing for Linda McMahon to be working for the Trump administration, the Trump regime. Linda McMahon's being grilled about stuff, and like there's Hunter Hearst Helmsley in the background. He takes a sip of his water, and all us wrestling fans were waiting for him to spit it out because that's what he does in his entrance. Vince McMahon's sexual trafficking and federal offenses all went away because Donald Trump is friends with Vince McMahon, and so this horrific stuff that's get done went away. Like everybody who's freaking out about Punk going to Saudi Arabia and taking that money is ignoring the hypocrisy that already exists by Punk being back in WWE. Not because WWE treated him poorly and he said he'd never go back, but because WWE is an immoral company. And the idea that Punk is somehow worse for going to Saudi Arabia while working in WWE is crazy to me. Because yes, Punk is a wild hypocrite for going to Saudi Arabia. And it's just like full mask off, in my opinion. It is worse than working for WWE. It's more obvious. It's more blatant. He doesn't care about being called a hypocrite. That's clear. He's getting a boatload of money. But my bigger issue with the hypocrisy, like that's bad. I don't want to have this like back and forth. But we already knew this. This again is established throughout his career. But just by being in WWE, he stopped wearing the Protect Trans Kids shirts. If he cared, if he was the voice of the voiceless, if he's willing to lose his job on Monday Night Raw or on SmackDown or wherever he is, a pay-per-view preferably, he'd come out in a Protect Trans Kids shirts. Why not? Because Triple H wouldn't like it. Because Triple H is a mega Republican. And yeah. So Punk stopping wearing those shirts, but promoting it personally on his Instagram page where he can't get in trouble for it, but not in public. Not the voice of the voiceless. He's not standing up for the people who could use that ally right there. The other thing that has happened recently in WWE is they have let go of all their openly queer female wrestlers. And like the fact that this is not getting more coverage, that there's not pushback about this, whoever's boycotting Target really needs to put some attention on the WWE, because there's a very obvious progressive alternative that people could be supporting in AEW. And this isn't like Jeremy's an AEW mark. I am. Kenny Omega is my favorite wrestler. Kota Ibushi is there. The Golden Lovers, great. Kazuchika Okada is there. Like the card for All In July 12th is a banger. I mean, pretty much any match I would buy that pay-per-view just for that match. And there's a whole card of them. I like AEW so much more than WWE. That's not what this is about, though. Like, to work for a corporation who has fired all the openly queer people, and then to say that you're like a leftist, that you're liberal, that you are the voice of the voiceless. Nah, man, don't talk about Vladimir Kozlov and people being let go when you didn't think they deserved to be, when you thought they were talented, just didn't play the politics. But like, this is real life. Like, these people are in danger. Sonya Deville had like real problems with a stalker from her time in WWE. And then like they're gonna let her go because Donald Trump's elected and Triple H is MAGA. I think Triple H is not straight, but like is presumably presented as heterosexual, even though like there's a fairly famous, like he's probably watching his girlfriend at the time get railed by another wrestler. Whatever. I'm not here to kink shame. I will talk about the hypocrisy of it all though. And like, so WWE is turning conservative openly because they can, because they're buddies with Trump, but also that's who they are. And they're bought out by TKO, and TKO is also owns UFC. And Dana White, I bring this up all the time, is like punched his wife on TV. That's not okay. It's not okay to assault another human being, but like the domestic violence. And another corporation that is like making millions of dollars off of not paying people and not taking care of their insurance. Very famous UFC fighter just had to like do a GoFundMe to get his medical bills covered. Like, America has problems. The healthcare system is one of the big ones. But again, like, I have 200 subscribers on YouTube. It might be trendy right now to be calling out CM Punk's hypocrisy. And I've been meaning to do this video for a while. And like, the mask is off all the way. It's very easy to like highlight this is not great. And I can go back to 2005 and say, hey, that wasn't great either. 20 years have passed. Maybe he really hasn't grown. Maybe he should be spending more money on therapy. Punk, I'm a short drive from Chicago to Milwaukee. Come see me, bro. Probably not after this video. I've besmirched you quite publicly. Um, could help though. Anyone who's super wealthy and wants to know how to be a better ally and confront their privilege, like, hey, I got openings for you. I will happily take that privileged money because that will fund me working with people who are leaving cults in northern Wisconsin and have no money at all. Like, so yeah, my issue with Punk is that he's a hypocrite, yes. That he's not a good of a wrestler as he thinks he is, yes. That he ruined Hangman Page's uh, title reign, although Hangman has continued to be an astounding character and so excited for the arc that he's on right now. A formative memory for my 7-year-old is going to AEW in Milwaukee, and Hangman was on the big screen and burned a man's house to the ground. Core memory unlocked. Me and my 7-year-old watching wrestling together while a man's house is burned down. And now we're cheering for that man. And that man whose house is burned down is also cheering for that man because that man is Hangman Adam Page. Anyway, my issue is not the hypocrisy. My issue is not that he's not as good of a wrestler as I'd like him to be. My issue is not that he's taken the spot of other wrestlers who are better than he is. My issue is that he's a rich white guy who could be doing so much more than he is, and he's not, and he wants to be patted on the back for the little bit that he's doing. When he hasn't confronted his privilege, when he hasn't used that privilege to the full extent that he could be using it, is he doing more than other wrestlers? Yes. That is such a low bar. And to be standing up for trans rights is great and needed. And every time he goes to a parade, it does a little bit of a trend online. But to continue to work for a company that has fired all your queer coworkers and continue to cash their check and not be using that privilege for anything else is maddening. You saying free Palestine on your Instagram account hasn't done anything. That does not move the needle. He could be in the headlines for the next week. It's the 24-hour news cycle. I don't think he could change policy because he's a wrestler, not a government official. But like, he could make that splash that he always talked about making. He could be that voice of the voiceless, and he isn't. He's cashing those checks. He's taking the money from Saudi Arabia. He's taking the money from WE. He's taking the money from TKO. He's kissing the ring of Triple H, who's a garbage person as well. All the things he said he stood against, we have evidence that he does not stand for when it actually matters. And that is why he gets an episode on Sad Rich White Guys. He's not the worst guy in the world. He's not an evil person. He's just old and rich, and he's miserable because the world didn't bend over backwards for him the way he wanted it to. And that is a pretty textbook definition of privilege. And that puts him into the same category as people that he would hate being in, like Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan, Harrison Butker, and whoever else I've talked about in the Sad Rich White Guy series. Aaron Rodgers, forthcoming episode. Probably wait till the start of this football season. Ugh. And it's hard, it's hard as a wrestling fan because a lot of wrestlers are awful. See, Stone Cold Steve Austin abused his wife publicly. We know this definitively. And it's hard to not like him. It's hard to not still like see Punk return in AEW and not feel chills when Cult of Personality hits and the crowd in Chicago loses their minds. It's such a cool moment. That dog collar match he has with MJF is going to remain a real high point. If anybody wants to go back and watch some of the indie stuff, like his stuff on ROH is great, but like go watch him wrestle Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio when they're both available to be on the indies. Like, it's not the best match in the world, but like, what a time capsule of these larger than life superstars who happen to be available to wrestle on this indie show and get to wrestle this up and coming guy in a way that their careers would never have intersected otherwise. Like, it's hard as a wrestling fan to like take Punk out of it. I feel for, I don't, because like, stop listening to Michael Jackson, but I can say that because I was never a fan of Michael Jackson. Molested children, stop listening to him. But, like, it's hard when you're a fan of something, you really care about it, and this for 20 years, this figure has been part of it. Say, like, "Oh, they're not a good person." I think Punk's probably a good person. I think Punk is not as good as he could be, and certainly not as good as he thinks he is, which is why he's so miserable. Cognitive dissonance is a real bitch. But, hey, maybe that will change. I don't think it will. I think it's the pits. I think it's the bottom of the bottom to go to Saudi Arabia and do an unprompted public apology. It's Monday. Maybe he'll come out on Raw wearing a Protect Trans Kid shirt and get fired tomorrow and make a big stink about it. That'd be cool. Not holding my breath. Also, you're not holding your breath. You're probably like, when is this video going to end? I think this is the longest one I've done. I interviewed a comic book writer for longer than this, Jason Aaron. CM Punk wrote a comic book, several of them. He says it's clobbering time before he comes out. That's a punk band reference, but also a reference to the Thing from the Fantastic Four. Again, I can go and go and go about wrestling minutia, but that's it. That's sad rich white guys, of which CM Punk is a member. Womp womp. All right, y'all. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Thanks for being here. If you watched the whole thing. I appreciate you. I love to talk about pro wrestling. So if you want more, I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I'm sure I could get like a ring psychology thing going. I just don't know that pro wrestling and mental health are the most popular topics together. I could sure talk about it more. But drop down in the comments if you want to hear me talk about pop culture and mental health overlaps. Let me know. If you want to hear me do a song review, talk about something, drop down in the comments. Please like and subscribe. That helps people find my work. If you liked this and you want to hear me talk about, the trauma and religious trauma in comic books, you can check out my podcast, Your Therapist Needs Therapy. I talked to Jason Aaron and a bunch of other people. It's cool. I appreciate y'all. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Peace.